Here's a nice family-friendly afternoon walk. Perfect for burning off a hearty Sunday lunch before setting off home after your weekend break. We're heading into Beatrix Potter country, walking from Bowness to the village of Farsori. But instead of taking the popular Beatrix Potter trail, we're going via the woods on Claife Heights. There's no special reason for that, we just like to be different. We're going to start from Bowness Pier and head for the vehicle ferry to take us across the lake. That's a pleasant lakeside stroll of just under a mile. Face the piers, turn to your left and simply follow the lakeshore path until you reach the last shops. Then take the driveway leading to Cockshot Point and follow the path beside the lake. At the other end, turn right to follow the path down to the car park and then up to the road, following signs for the ferry. Turn right when you reach the road and head down to the ferry landing. You shouldn't have long to wait, and the ferry is a bargain price of 50p for each person. Once you're on the western shore of Windermere, we're going to head up into the woods on Claife Heights. Simply follow the road for a couple of 100 yards, then turn right to follow this lakeside footpath. At the other end, cross the road, head under the arch, noting of course the closing times for the cafe, bearing in mind that we'll be passed by here on the way back in about an hour and a half's time, all being well. And just follow this path up from the cafe, heading for Claife Station, which will be our first stop. Claife Station has absolutely nothing to do with buses or trains. It's actually an old viewing station, now owned by the National Trust. It dates from the end of the 18th century, and for the best part of 100 years it was the focal point of local high society. You couldn't just turn up and have a look around and enjoy the views like you can today. But if you had wealth and influence, you could be invited for an evening of dancing and merriment. The high society fun didn't last, however, and for the second 100 years of its life, this building stood alone, unwanted, and ultimately derelict. In 2015, the building started a new chapter in its life, after the National Trust renovated it to something like its former glory. Although I don't think they're going to be holding lavish dinner parties quite yet. Right, having had a good mooch around Claife Station, we need to go on the second part of the walk. Just go under the archway and between these two rocks, identified with a white mark. Simply follow the path up into the woods. It's a bit muddy in parts, there are a couple of steep sections, there's only one path so you shouldn't really go wrong. At the top the path bears right to follow this fence. Simply continue along, enjoying occasional glimpses of Bowness Bay to your right through the trees. Eventually you'll come to this gate leading to a wider track. Turn left here, following the sign for Farsori. You'll be pleased to know that this is the highest point of the walk. From here back to the cafe it's pretty much downhill all the way. When you reach the next junction, carry straight on, through this gate and on into the next field. As you can see, the track's wide and really easy to follow. The village in the distance is near Sori. Beatrix Potter lived there from 1913 until her death in 1943, although not, as you may believe, at Hilltop. She bought Hilltop in 1905 and used it as a retreat and workshop but when she made a permanent move to the Lake District, it was to Castle Cottage, a much larger house on the opposite side of the village. Of course, it's not difficult to see the attraction of living in Near Sory, is it? I mean, it's an idyllic place to live and to work. We're not actually going into the village of Near Sory, we're heading for the village of Far Sory. We simply carry on along this track, and it's not long before the houses appear in the distance. You come out close to Far Sory's tiny little parish hall, which is next door to the Cuckoo Brow Inn. When you reach the road, turn left to follow the signed path back towards the ferry. Okay, I know, I said back there that it was downhill all the way, so I fibbed a little bit. It's not far. At the top, we just go through this gate. It's a bit too much Yorkie pudding, I think. The path then runs in front of a large house called Sory Nuts. It's somewhere under that flower bed. That was actually quite fragrant walking through there. At the other end, drop down a slope, through a gate, and follow the narrow path down the hill to another gate. You see, I told you it was downhill all the way. Apart from a set of steps a bit later on, but don't worry about it, it's downhill until we get to them. At the end of this track, you come out by the main road. We need to walk down this road for about 200 yards. Keeping well into the left. It's the main road to the ferry, and you also get cyclists and others on it, so it can get quite busy at times. That's busy by Lake District standards, that is. Just past that house on the right, we cross over the road to follow a path that runs downhill but parallel to the road, so it's a lot safer. At the bottom, cross the road again to follow this path up through the trees. You will emerge in a small car park containing some quite big cars on the day we did it. At the opposite end of the car park is a wide track leading into the trees. Follow it for a short distance and then turn left to climb this set of steps, which has to be said is not in the best condition. A bit like me really, the newness has worn off me. At the top, turn right to walk down the slope, back to the cafe, and with luck, a welcome cup of tea and a piece of cake. What do you mean I don't need it? Man cannot live by tea alone. I need chocolate cake. Then from the cafe, simply retrace your steps back to the ferry to cross the lake and walk back into Bowness. As I said at the start, the perfect way to end your weekend break in the lakes.